Okay, back again. And to be honest, I can't remember exactly where I was. Talking about, Ethiopia and starving children, things really, that opened my mind as a small kid. I remember bawling my eyes out, and not knowing why or how that sort of atrocity could occur in today's society. When you look at things from a naive and young perspective, I suppose. So that was another big thing that really rocked me and woke me up to a different reality, I suppose, to the one that I was accustomed to, with my modern Western routine of going to school and all the popular culture things that you do at that age. So that's really what opened my mind, I suppose. I also used to have strange dreams. Now, again, I don't know whether they were, and I suspect they may have been, inspired by popular culture at the time. I used to have dreams about, there was one particular one that reoccurred a few times of me meeting people in woodland in the night, and running to clearings in the woodlands where there would be a bright light, basically, that used to come from the sky. And I always used to wake up at that point, and it happened on multiple occasions. So that always stuck in my mind, and it was really weird. I never really got to the bottom of it, but for some reason, even at the time, I remember thinking, this dream is so weird, I want to have this dream again. What was it about? Amongst other things as well that happened, I suspect when I was quite young, probably younger even, I had moments where I was projecting my mind or my thoughts into space. And I seem to remember doing that as quite a young child. At times where I was in my bedroom at night and not able to sleep, I think I was putting myself in a meditative state. It's very difficult to be 100% on that, but I definitely recall not feeling like I was asleep, but that I was in an altered state. So the chances are that I probably was sort of meditating as a young child, which is curious. So I thought I'd add that in there because you guys will be interested in that if you ever get to see this. Still very self-conscious on this recording, so you have to bear with me. Things are quite slow, so if you're bored and you've switched off, I completely understand why. So that's really where I started with it all, really. And I've had periods of my life where I've sort of delved back into it, and it wasn't really until the last few years where I've really just stuck at it, and I've been reading, I'd say since about 27, 28. At that time I really got back into it and started spending more time on, in alternative sources of media, news media, documentaries, films, etc., all through the internet, as streaming became more commonplace, I suppose, video streaming especially. I've also been very interested in politics and the structure of society and human psychology as well over the years. So I have researched those subjects independently, and I've also spent a little time in a college as well studying politics to a point, only a year's worth of study, and I didn't really stay on course either and ended up dropping out of the course, but I was doing my own investigations, specifically into the political philosophies of communitarianism and individualism, and how they differ and are at polar opposites on a philosophical scale. So I am interested in those sort of politics and philosophy as well to a point, but my knowledge is quite limited, especially around philosophical concepts and things. But yeah, still, as you can see, my interests broadened over the time. So yeah, I'm just hoping that through these videos, one, people can maybe get to know each other this way. Two, we can share thoughts and information on different subjects that interest the group. There's a hell of a lot of information out there on YouTube, on the internet in general, and obviously some of it is of what you would deem nefarious origins, really, and we may well be being distracted by the albatross, so to speak, whilst crossing the ocean of information. There's clearly going to be disinformation agents out there. There's clearly sophisticated methods of that poisoning of the well, if you will. So something that may look very legitimate and well thought out and non-linear, if it's anecdotal, for example, may well just be very clever programming. So although I'm very open-minded, I'm also I always have a filter in place, default filter, which keeps me in an agnostic belief system where I don't believe everything I see, but I don't disbelieve everything I see. If it's something that's circumstantial, I'll consider it. Until it's physical in its form, I won't believe it 100%. But I am absolutely fascinated, especially when it comes to, the whole story, the human history. We've been lied. I believe we have been lied to. And we simply don't know. Even the mainstream archaeologists and historians still don't know what really happened before ancient Sumeria, which was 12,000 years ago. So they only know about our histories up until 12,000 years ago, according to mainstream science. So what the hell happened for the last million odd years before? Which begs the question, if we don't know what happened to our histories more than 12 years before, then what do we know about what's happening outside of our stratosphere, outside of our lovely planet, Earth? How do we have any idea? I think we have very little idea about what's going on out there if we just listen to conventional thought. And that's why I leave the door wide open for the wildest conspiracies. Because it's a wild, This is a wild place we live in. My God, we only just got fucking, the mod cons of today's society as a result of industrialization. It's wild. We live on a wild planet. We live in a wild world. We live in a wild universe we have absolutely no concept of. We may as well be bacteria in terms of the scale of things we're talking about here. So, yeah, that's why my mind is wide open. It's a no-brainer, as far as I'm concerned. And like they always say, the mind is like a parachute. If it's not open, it doesn't work. And I hold to that. So I don't know how much longer I want to do this because A, I don't want to bore you to tears, and B, you might not make it this far because I'm just waffling, and C, I might not post this anyway because it's a practice run. But I may as well keep it running, I suppose. I can edit it, so yeah. I suppose a thought on average people who go about their average lives, you can see how very, very easy it would be to never change your mindset about things, because everything we do is so circular that we cut such deep grooves in our brains, such patterns of behaviour, that if we're not conscious of our own behaviour, we don't analyse it objectively on some level, we may never be conscious of the grooves, really, and we just sort of live out a habitual existence. So I can see how people just go about their routines and they don't really ever think about anything outside of them, because we just all have to do the same thing every day, and it's part of our biology to need that, but it's also how the system is designed to make people sort of stuck in that rigid lifestyle and rigid patterns and rigid thought processes as a result. Imagine, some people probably just do the same job day in, day out. It's not cognitive, it's not creative, it's simply a repetitive task. Obviously a lot of those jobs were in the factories and industrialised world, and that goes on to a great extent in other parts of the world today. But they are saying, Oxford University has said, and other places they've done research, because of robotics we won't have a middle class, which basically means, I don't think we're talking about wealth, we're talking about jobs and earnings when we say middle class in this context. Robotics will take the vast majority of the jobs, and there's literally two categories of jobs left in the future, according to these researchers, and they are services jobs, so like shop, store type thing, and cognitive jobs, and everything in between will be done by a robot or some sort of computer, basically. And so you can see how that kind of aligns with a completely polarised world, where we have the lords and the serfs, and that's kind of how the money system works as well in its current form, where you have banking cartels controlling the issuance of currency, so they can just create money out of thin air. None of that. If anyone else did it would be counterfeiting. That's the common, understanding of that. So it's bonkers. What a crazy world. Obviously, it's becoming more polarised in its current form of crony capitalist control. Government just basically completely whipped by multinational corporations. You know all this. This is part of the structure. This is the pyramid structure that we form, the power structure. But what does it mean to come alive? Well, as a species, we need to start waking up. Again, this has all been said by people in the alternative media, but it's true. We need to start creating a new reality for ourselves. Obviously, we have to go about our daily lives to a certain extent, because we have to survive in the system that provides for us. And we are kind of like children of the state, because none of us are really independent. None of us are, quote, off-grid. None of us can grow our own food all year round to support ourselves. We all have to pay council tax. We all have to be part of the system. there's really no escape from the system on the face of the planet, really, unless you want to go and live in a commune in South America, in the Amazon, or in Nicaragua or somewhere like that. Maybe then you can escape, but that brings its own dangers. So we are all dependent. We're all kind of children of the state, or children to the corporations, really, because the state is just is a tool of the corporate interests and the elite and the elites in the banking cartel and the families that run the banking cartels in the West. So we need some other kind of awakening whilst we keep doing what we have to do to get by as a biochemical entity in the system we live in. So it's about consciousness, isn't it? It's about lifting consciousness. It's about realizing that we are perhaps able to transcend it in other ways, because by concealing the potential truths about the human abilities, call them special abilities or otherwise, they are kind of setting themselves up for a fall. When I say they, I'm referring to the establishment and the controllers. By dictating to us what we learn in schools, indoctrinating us through culture, and by avoiding these alternative superpowers that humans have, they are setting themselves up for a fall now that we have an information age and that we can all join together in the digital space and express ourselves in ways that don't conform to the system. We can come together and elevate our own consciousness together and bring our experiences together and bring our life experiences together and bring our own understandings of how things work. And this is really how we break the paradigm that we live in, the social paradigms, the political paradigms, the economic paradigms, potentially, is by coming together as groups and, starting as a small group and working into larger groups and raising the consciousness. As there are more and more of us, there'll be more and more change. This is the way we're going to change people's consciousness, by coming together. And this is how I don't want to say we have a revolt, but this is how we stand up to the system, really. Because eventually you could potentially awake a significant portion of the population, I think, with these types of things. Because as you realise, you're not all that unusual to be to have the beliefs you have, and to realise that the whole system is a sham ran by a bunch of criminals that just want to dictate and control your life, and ultimately don't really want you to exist. Once you wake up to that and you realise that there's no point in fearing it, you just have to face it. It is one of the most empowering things that you can do in your life. And once you link with people that have transcended that, that's when really new ideas and new practices will start to develop. And that's where we'll have the transformation of humanity from a caterpillar to a butterfly. What better analogy is there? So I'm optimistic, and there are some personal fears you have to maybe overcome on the way, but when you realise the cause is good then there should be no inhibitions towards that end. And that's why I braved up and said, screw it. I don't like my voice. I don't like looking at myself on camera. But again, it's all ego stuff itself. You need to look beyond it. There's such a big, wide universe of opportunity for us as a species if we come together out there, that it would just be an absolute tragedy for us to not do it. So the time is now. And I think, do you know what? I'm going to end it on there because I want to drink some coffee, and that's about 20 minutes of video for the second segment. So I'm going to leave it there, and I will post to ET this video. So good luck, and thanks for putting up with me. See you later. Bye.